Hello guys, and welcome to my channel. In this video I'll be showing you how I made this toddler pajama set with detailed pattern making. So if you're interested in how I achieve this look, please stay tuned. Alright guys, let's get started. I'll be using 1 yard of this cotton knit stretch print fabric, a pajama set to trace for the pattern, and some elastic that's 3/4 of an inch wide. I roll out the craft paper and place the pants down front side up. I trace down the side and the inner seam. Then I use my seam ripper to poke through and indicate the center seam and the front waistband that should be on a diagonal and about an inch lower than the back waistband at the center. I flip the pants over to the back, lining it along the front side of the pant I just traced. Then I trace the inner seam, the bottom of the pant, and along the waistband as well. Again, I take my seam ripper to poke through and indicate the center seam. I take my curved and straight ruler to trace and indicate the marks from the seam ripper and perfect and straighten lines that need to be fixed. After fixing the lines, I add a 1/2 inch seam allowance around the pattern. At the waistband, I add 3/4 of an inch seam allowance, which is the same width of the elastic. After adding the seam allowance, I cut the pattern out. Now the pattern for the pants are complete. I roll out some more craft paper and fold the top in half to the back, then place the fold along the straight edge of the craft paper. I trace around the shirt, then grab my seam ripper and poke through the arm seam to indicate that line onto the craft paper. Then I use my curved and straight ruler to trace and perfect all lines. After adding the seam allowance, I cut double of the same pattern piece. I place one aside that will be for the back of the shirt, and I modify the neckline of the original pattern for the front of the shirt. To do that, I fold the shirt in half to the front and line the shoulders together on the original tracing. Then I poke through along the front neckline with my seam ripper. I use my curved ruler to trace the indication of the front neckline, then add my 1/2 inch seam allowance, trace, and cut. Now I have the pattern for the front of the shirt with the front neckline. To make the pattern for the sleeves, I place the sleeve of the shirt onto the craft paper. I decided to make this a long sleeve, so I elongated the sleeve out 14 inches and marked at that point. Then I use my ruler to trace down the side of the arm. I poke through to indicate the top curve of the sleeve. Then I measure and trace 3 inches over at the bottom of the sleeve. I connect and trace the underarm and bottom of the sleeve together, and use my curved ruler to trace the curve of the sleeve at the top. Then I add my 1/2 inch seam allowance around the sleeve, trace around, then cut. Now I have the pattern for the sleeves, the front and the back of the shirt, and the pants. All the pieces for the pants include 2 separate pieces cut from the pattern. I've also cut cuff pieces for the bottom of the pants, which are a ½ inch shorter than the length of the bottom of the pants and 2 inches in width. And I also have some elastic. First, I take both pant pieces and fold them in half, right sides in, lining the inner pant lines together. Then I sew down with a zigzag stitch. After sewing that together, I turn them both right side out. I line both seams together, right side facing in, and pin. Then I continue pinning together on both sides. I sew across with a zigzag stitch. Now both legs are attached together. Next, I grab the elastic and overlap about a ½ inch over the seam, then line and pin around the raw ends of the waistline. When I get to the end, I cut a ½ inch overlapping on the other side of the seam and sew around the edge with a zigzag stitch. After sewing the elastic on, I fold the waistband in and sew along the end of the waistband all the way around. Here's the waistband after it's complete. To finish off the bottom of the pants, I'm going to add the cuffs. I grab my cuff pieces and fold them in half, front facing in, then sew down the sides with a zigzag stitch. I line and fold the seams in half onto itself and continue folding the rest of the cuff in half from the bottom up. Then I pin the seams together and pin the other half point of the cuff at the top raw edge. I do the same for the other cuff. I take and pin the half points opposite side of the seams of the bottom of the pants. These 2 points will be lined and pinned with the 2 cuff points. To do that, I line the seam of the cuff with the seam of the pant, pulling the pant through the cuff first and lining the raw edges, then pin at both points. Once they are lined and pinned together, I stretch to fit as I sew around with a zigzag stitch. Here's the cuff after it's been attached. Now the pants are complete. For the shirt, I have the front and back piece, the sleeves, the cuffs, a ½ inch shorter than the measurements of the length of the bottom of the sleeves and 2 inches wide. I also have a long strip at 1½ inches wide that will be for the bias tape around the neckline. First, I line the shirts together, right sides facing in, and sew one side of the sleeves together with a zigzag stitch and set that aside. Now to prepare the bias tape, I take the long strip, open it up, fold it in half and press all the way down. Then I take and fold both sides towards the center and press down. From there, I fold it in half again and press all the way down. This is what the bias tape will look like after it's complete. Next, I open up the neckline, grab my bias tape, open it up and line it along the neckline, right sides facing in, and pin. Then I sew across with a zigzag stitch. After sewing that together, I cut off the excess bias tape on the other side along the same line of the shoulder. I flip the shirt over and starting at one end, I fold the end of the bias tape towards the center point. Making sure the seam of the neckline is faced down towards me, I flip the bias tape over underneath the seam and pin in place on the other side. Here's a closer look. I continue to fold and pin the bias tape in place across the neckline. Then I sew a zigzag stitch along the bottom of the bias tape. Here's a closer look once that's complete. I line the shirt right sides facing in and sew the shoulder together on the other side with a zigzag stitch. Next, I open up the armhole and line the center point of the sleeve with the shoulder seam, right sides facing in, and pin together. Then I continue pinning down both sides. I sew across with a zigzag stitch. After the sleeves are attached, I line the shirt right side in and pin the underarm seams together. Then I line and sew straight down the sleeves and the sides of the shirt with a zigzag stitch. When the sides and the sleeves are sewn together, I turn the shirt right side out. I add the cuffs to the end of the sleeves using the same steps as I did for the bottom of the pants. I went ahead and hemmed the bottom of the shirt, and here are the cuffs after they've been attached. Now both the shirt and pants are finished, and the pajama set is complete. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can know when there's a new upload. Also, please feel free to share and ask me any questions you may have down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!